Welcome, welcome, everybody. Surprise! I'm the host this week, Brittany, joined by my co-hosts, Julian, Eric, and the Hawk.
Hi. Hey, Brittany.
Hello.
As you can tell, I'm definitely the most hyper today. How's everybody doing?
Tired.
Oh, you know,
Yeah.
I feel like I've been in a cage all weekend.
Oh, God.
I walked
Yeah.
into the dad cage after having a nice Father's Day off, and it was
Yeah.
Everybody sounds about as tiring and miserable as the episode itself, but I don't, because I had coffee like 3 hours ago after work, so I'm super hype.
I wish I had coffee.
I had
Drinking coffee. I'm still
badly
not there.
brewed Dunkin' Donuts iced tea, and that was
Ew.
Yeah.
Oh boy, do I have
Whoa.
news for you guys. Speaking of coffee.
Do we have any coffee left?
No, but we have something even better.
I don't want something even better. I want
Really?
coffee.
It's made from a proteinaceous seed I discovered on an expedition.
Never mind. I'll use one of my replicator rations for coffee.
Hey guys, we have a super exciting announcement. We've partnered with the fine folks over at Logical Coffee, and we're really excited about this partnership, and here to tell us more is the founder, Matt Bailey. Matt, welcome to the show, and thanks for coming
Hey.
on this journey with us.
Thanks for having me. I'm excited to be here with you guys.
So, we were very excited to find out there was a coffee company that's Star Trek themed, so we were wondering what brought you to coffee and why Star Trek?
Oh, so where do I begin? Why coffee? I mean, so I guess I could start when I started drinking coffee, which was I was 10 years old. I don't know.
wow.
Yeah, that's somewhere around 1990. Okay, so of course, I mean, I just drank coffee that my parents brewed, right? I just drank what they drank, Folgers, Maxwell House, whatever they had. And I liked the smell of coffee, so I just began drinking their coffee. I liked it. I've always liked coffee, the taste of coffee. It was never something that I really had to get used to or acquire the taste for. But in college, I began noticing all the new different types of coffee, the bags of coffee on the store shelves.
Mm-hmm.
I wanted to try them all. So every week almost, I'd get a new bag of coffee, and I'd try as many as I could. And I can't tell you how excited I was when I began to taste all the differences between, the different brands, the different roasts and things. And
Yeah.
that's when I began appreciating coffee for more than just the caffeine in the morning, right? That's when I began to love coffee. That was the key moment when I didn't just like coffee anymore. It wasn't just a thing. It was, I love coffee. I have to have more. I have to try more. I have to, develop a better taste for it, right? So
Yeah.
I guess about the same time, I was about 10 years old. That's when I began watching Star Trek, The Next Generation, with my dad. My parents still had an old black and white TV, in their bedroom.
Mm-hmm.
And every night Star Trek TNG was on, my dad would lay in bed and he would watch it.
Make it so.
Well, and, I was just really bored one night, and I didn't really know what he was watching. It didn't look all that great to me at the, just in passing. But so I just jumped on the bed and started watching Star Trek: The Next Generation with him. I was hooked. I don't remember what episode it was, but I remember I was totally hooked. I mean, I think it was probably what drew me in probably the most was the technology. I mean, I've always been in love with technology, and I did notice like a future within Star Trek that was simply better, and I think that appealed to me too. I really wasn't old enough to really understand much more than that.
Yeah.
But that's probably what drew me in. But I was totally hooked. So I guess that's a brief explanation of how my coffee and Star Trek journey began.
They're kind of similar,
Yeah.
You have a little bit and then you're hooked and then you want to see it all. So Star Trek's the same
Absolutely.
way. Everybody has one gateway Star Trek show that gets them into the rest of Star Trek. It's pretty
It was
cool.
TNG for me too. It wasn't coffee. The first time I had coffee, I had friends over at my dad's house, and I was trying to be cool, and I asked my stepmom, "Is this coffee hot still?" I was maybe like 7 or 8. She's like, "I don't know." So I went and tasted it. It was like freezing cold. I was like spit it out of my mouth. But now I love coffee. I can't live without it. I have it every morning. Matt, you talked about how much you started like being able to, tell the differences between coffee and, really appreciate it other than just for the caffeine. Obviously, that is evolved into you, starting up this company, Logical Coffee. When did the idea come about to start roasting your own coffee and combine it with Star Trek?
That was about well, the idea didn't come 3 years ago, but about 3 years ago, I realized that all the different pre-ground coffees that I was buying didn't really taste fresh. And the longer it took me to finish the bag of coffee, the worse it got. I guess my coffee taste had evolved, had gotten a little more refined, I guess.
None of that replicated crap.
Yeah, I was about to say.
Exactly. It wasn't
Same thing.
replicated at all. So I bought a coffee grinder and started to buy whole bean coffee instead, and then ground it myself, thinking this will solve the problem, right? But it still didn't taste all that fresh to me. So I did some research. I bought a small coffee roaster and just spent the next year learning how to roast my own coffee. And what I found was that once coffee is roasted, you only have about a week or two before it's not really fresh anymore. And that's why the coffee I was buying off the store shelves just didn't taste fresh. I mean, it had already been in a warehouse and then on a store shelf for upwards of 2 to 3 weeks before I even got it home. So by the time I finished the bag, it's a month old,
Yeah.
So once I learned that science behind roasting different coffee beans, I had a whole new love for coffee. So I went from liking coffee to loving coffee to, wow, I really love coffee now because I understand it better and I can provide myself fresh coffee, right? So I decided I wanted to share that with everybody else. I wanted to share it with my friends and my family. So I started roasting for them and handing it out and letting them sample it and teaching them how to grind it and brew it. And they loved it. So I decided to start a roasting business. I mean, I thought, well, I love sharing my love for coffee. So why not, And so I told my best friend, hi, Chris, who's also a Trekkie, about my idea. He immediately, it was kind of a shock to me. I mean, he immediately, I don't know why it was, but it didn't occur to me, but he immediately told me it should be Star Trek themed. He plays a lot of Star Trek timelines on mobile. And, he's in their Discord servers and everything. And he told me, these guys talk about coffee a lot. They love coffee, and you should make this Star Trek themed. And at first I was like, yeah, but isn't that kind of so narrow, And I was like, no, it's not. I love Star Trek.
Not when you
I love
see
coffee.
how widespread the love for Star Trek and coffee is and how they overlap.
Absolutely.
With characters like Janeway.
Yes, right. When I wake up in the morning, I want to beat the Borg too. So, I just decided, hey, I'm going to go with it because he had a great idea. I love it. So yeah.
I mean, we love it too. We're immediately, as soon as we saw via social media, we're like, oh, Logical Coffee, who are these guys? They've liked some of our posts. And then we're like, oh my God, this is obviously the logical choice.
Oh, Brittany, put the pun in there.
You're welcome.
Love it.
Can't believe it. I have so many puns to go with this now that we're partners, so just beware.
Excellent.
Obviously, Logical Coffee is something that's incredibly special. Just looking at the names of your products also, it's so cool to see how you've tied it into Star Trek in like these really quirky and fun ways. So what do you think makes it so special? Because theoretically you could think, anybody could probably do a Star Trek themed coffee. But what makes yours so special and really stand out?
Well, so our business model revolves around roast to order coffee. So, you can go anywhere and you can buy a bag of coffee off the store shelf like I was talking about. But again, how fresh is it, right? It's already been in a warehouse and on the store shelves for how long?
Yeah.
So that's why we decided, what, we want to roast the coffee when you order it and then ship it to you. So that means that your coffee is at peak freshness right when you get it. You don't have to wait around for a coffee roaster to let's say they roast every week. You don't have to wait for that or whatever. It's fresh when you get it, when you want it, right? So coffee really needs 2 to 3 days to rest after it's been roasted. So technically, coffee isn't technically fresh right after I roast it. It really needs 2 to 3 days to rest before it's considered, ready to brew, fresh roasted coffee. And so during this resting period, the roasted beans are degassing.
Mhm.
So that's so when you pick up a bag of coffee and you squeeze it to smell it, that's the gases that it has given off that's still inside the bag that hasn't escaped yet. That's what you're smelling.
That's one of my favorite things to do is smell
Yeah,
that.
just smell.
Absolutely.
I
Yeah.
think that's the best thing. You pop the lid off, and you're like, or open the bag.
Every time I hand a bag of coffee to someone locally, that's the first thing they do. Every single time.
Do they ever say something really cheesy like, beam me up, Scotty?
No, not yet.
But with a
Not yet.
bean me up?
Actually, I haven't. The only real Trekkie I've sold to locally is my friend Chris.
Oh, that's funny.
So what makes a special, fresh, roast to order coffee, and I think also the fact that we're trying to share that love of coffee with everyone. So while it is Trekkie coffee, everyone can enjoy it, right? Everyone can pick up that bag and smell the difference. They can grind it, brew it, taste the difference. So that I think that makes it very special in the sense that you are getting fresh coffee, and that 2 to 3 days that it takes to deliver to you, it's not losing freshness during that time because it has to rest 2 to 3 days. So when you get it, it's absolutely fresh. And after that 2 to 3 day period, that's when the coffee really gets the full-bodied flavor that you expect when you drink coffee. If you were to brew it right after it's been roasted, it's going to be kind of flat, not very full-bodied.
Yeah, just bean water.
Yeah, basically. Yeah.
So it needs that 2 to 3 day trek. Make it
Oh
to
my
your
God.
home where
Yes,
you can replicate
love it.
some amazing flavor.
That's right.
I know you're sending us some samples to try too, which we're going to talk about on the show, but I also ordered a bag of the, I believe it's called, is it called Warp Drive or Warp Speed? I forget. Or
Warp Drive.
Warp Drive.
Yeah.
My wife loves espresso roast, so I'm excited to try that. I'm excited to try all of it, honestly. Brittany knows how much I drink coffee and how much she drinks coffee.
Yeah, I'm going to get my whole family hooked so that way we can support your enterprise.
Oh, God. Before Brittany goes off on any more puns, even though she's hosting this week, this is a Star Trek show, and you are a Trekkie. So I guess we'll wrap it up with asking you your favorite Star Trek series and your favorite Star Trek character.
Well, I've already mentioned it, and if you can't tell by my background, Next Generation, absolutely. That was my first love, and I absolutely love Star Trek: The Next Generation. My favorite character, I guess, obviously had to have come first from Next Generation was Data.
I love Data.
I mean, it's really hard though because I love Picard, and so many characters, but Data. I really love Data. And then as I learned more about Trek, especially today, obviously I love Spock. I mean, just so very logical. And I think that translates well, right? Data, Spock, they're very logical. One's an android, of course, which explains the logic, but the other, a Vulcan, very logical. Yeah, I just love it. I love Data was my first love in a character, and then, of course, Spock.
Both of them would really appreciate, I think, also like the fine art of roasting coffee, right?
Exactly.
Because they like everything to be like meticulous and perfect.
Absolutely.
But then they also like human nature. So not only would they like the refined elements, but they would also be like, how does this make you feel? What does it make you recall? I want to know. So I like it. It's a great balance. And, you have great balanced coffee too.
Thank you very much. We really appreciate it.
Matt, where can we find you? Social media, and for people who are local as well.
Oh, you can just go to our website. Everything is there, logicalcoffee.com. We have links to our Instagram, our Facebook, and Twitter. And you can email us from there at the Contact Us page. And give us a shout out. There's a chat box in the bottom right. If we're online and you're online, you have a question, hit that chat box. Talk to me. Let me know what questions you have. I'd be glad to answer them.
So we'll be sharing more information with you guys later this episode about how you can get a little bit of a discount on your first order. So yeah, you want to make it so. You want to brew it.
Engage.
It's the logical choice, and we support it. Thank you so much for coming on, Matt. We loved having you, and hopefully we can have you on again.
Thanks,
We'll definitely
I really
be
appreciate it.
your awesome coffee.
Yeah, I'm excited about it.
Live long and drink coffee.
Live long and drink coffee. Love it.
So, really awesome announcement. Hope you guys are excited for it. I also want to give a big thanks, as always, to Sam Dillard and Samo Studios for, our super awesome intro and outro music. And, of course, to Alexander Courage, the composer behind the original Star Trek theme. I dance to it at the beginning of every episode, you guys know.
Yep. It's
All
good.
the energy that I don't have.
But
But now I'm picked up like after hearing about all the delicious coffee, and I can't wait to taste it.
yes, me too. Oh man.
I'm
coffee.
super hyper drive for it.
I
Wow.
can't wait to beam it.
I don't know.
I'll beam it into my mouth.
Beam it into my mouth.
We're human beings exploring the galaxy.
You know what I totally forgot is that Voyager had replicator rations. After
did?
listening to that clip, they never really used it. It was like, yeah,
I
we
think they
can't
did
do
in
that.
Year of Hell, right?
Did they?
They rationed everything.
They should have been rationing from the get-go, though.
To be fair,
They
yeah.
were, though.
Apparently they
Were
had.
they?
At some point, yeah, because I mean, they had a chef. Neelix became their chef, and that because they knew they couldn't survive on the replicators alone, and that for a 70,000.
They even rationed their shields.
Yeah.
I feel like early in the first season, they're like, shields at 100%. And then as you go on, they're like, 30?
Yeah.
20%, you know?
Yeah.
I still love the fact though that Voyager seemed to have an unlimited supply of shuttlecrafts.
Oh, yeah.
They
They're
just
always
kept
getting
making
like
them.
captured and destroyed.
Photon torpedoes.
That's where they were using the rations.
Seven left.
They were replicating things for the shuttlecrafts.
Yeah, good
Oh, God.
explanation.
Well, time to shuttle you to our main discussion that everybody's trying to avoid.
I don't know what you're talking about.
No
I
idea.
love this episode.
I'm going to take it to the cage.
Oh,
And not the...
Fighting.
Wait. Oh, I'm going to throw a curveball your way. Phew.
oh,
Hopefully
no.
it's a curveball. I don't really know. So people that joined our Discord and watched the video or the episode live with us might have noticed some funny Nick Cage memes that I threw in that were Star Trek related. So I want to ask you guys, what's your favorite Cage related thing? Not Nick Cage, just anything with Cage in general. And then I want us to rank on a scale of blank cage to blank cage where this episode falls.
On that
I know.
meter.
Yeah, our cage meter.
Mm.
I already have 2 other cages in mind for my parameters.
Now I want to do a Nick Cage.
I
thing.
got one. I got it.
I know you do.
I have something this week.
Okay, tell us your first one or
You
whatever.
remember early on in maybe the first couple of seasons of Friends, Monica is dating John Favreau's character,
Oh, God.
Yes,
and he's
I
like
remember that.
Monica, and Monica's all convinced that he's gonna propose to her, and
Yeah.
he's like, Monica, I've never been so sure of anything in my life. I want to become the ultimate fighting king.
Yeah.
And Monica's just
I want to become the ultimate fighting champion.
You want to what?
And his character was a billionaire, so he had the resources to actually do this.
Yeah.
and,
It
and
was wild.
during that time, UFC was still illegal, so the whole thing was even more funny. But you see a fake kind of UFC cage match. It's more like WWE match than anything, and you just see John Favreau get annihilated. But he's like, I want to be a cage fighter, and he does, and he gets
Wow.
wrecked. Yeah.
So far we have John Favreau, cage fighter from Friends.
Yep. I will throw out there one of my favorite movies from 1996, The Birdcage, which starred Robin Williams.
Very nice.
And Nathan Lane and Hank Azaria, Gene Hackman, and it's an adaptation of the 1978
It's a French film, right?
film.
Le
yeah,
Cage
Cajun-
Falls.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
if you don't know what this movie is, just go in, just watch it. Because
It's a wild ride.
it's so much better if you don't know what's going to happen.
Madonna.
Fussy, you do Martha Graham, or Madonna. But you keep it all inside.
Exactly. And it's one of my favorite Robin Williams roles. So yeah, watch it. Birdcage, awesome.
Hawk, did you think of a cage yet? If not, I can stall for time with mine.
It better be Nick Cage, and it better be National Treasure.
No, I don't think I've ever actually sat through National Treasure. So.
I love those movies.
So good.
Well,
Unabashedly
this
love 'em.
episode was not a national treasure, that's for sure.
One The only one that popped to mind was Spider-Man, the first Spider-Man by Sam Raimi.
Yeah.
Cage match between Spider-Man and Macho
Bonesaw.
Man Randy Savage.
Okay.
It's Warzone all over again, Julian.
I feel like
We say this every time we play. It's the bone saw. That's the bone saw.
I guess I'll finish. I just can't even. I don't even play with you guys, and that was hilarious.
You should.
we've been
I
telling.
will. I'm getting there.
And we'll say it every day.
Just wait until my employment changes slightly. I guess I'll finish mine up with good old Luke Cage.
Ooh.
I also had a runner-up in Cage the Elephant, but it's a whole nother thing.
Oh, I had
So,
Great band.
Yes.
based on our 4 cages, where do we rank the episode of The Cage on a scale of greatness?
all the way at the bottom. Bottom.
I would say the Jon Favreau Ultimate Fighting Cage Champion.
Was the
Same
bottom?
level? Or that's the bottom?
The bottom.
Really? I don't know.
I don't know
He
what.
was like-
Favreau's in there, so that at least makes it a little bit better.
Yeah, that's true.
So this pilot is slightly better than being a guest star on Friends?
I mean, to be fair, everybody was a guest star on Friends back in the day. Bruce Willis guest starred on Friends.
Brad
Yeah.
Pitt was
Brad
on
Pitt.
Friends.
George Clooney was on Friends. You name them, they've been
Yeah.
on.
Was it Tom Selleck? Yeah.
Yes.
The fucking stash.
Oh,
Okay. Yeah, I'm gonna just throw mine. Luke Cage is great, so I'm putting him. He's up there.
Birdcage.
I think he beats
at
all
the
of yours.
top.
Oh yeah, Birdcage. Okay, Birdcage at the top.
Yeah.
Luke Cage a close second,
Mm-hmm.
Spider-Man.
only because he
Macho
doesn't make
Man.
you laugh as much.
who's more impressive, Jon Favreau, Ultimate Fighting Champion, or the Bonesaw?
The bone saw. Get
Their fight
down
was definitely
here.
way more. It was way more believable than the fighting in this episode.
Oh, it's
Well,
true.
Let's talk about that a little bit, shall we?
Let's.
So,
No,
I
do
mean,
not.
simply put, everybody and their mom. Yeah, we do. So sorry.
I guess that's
The only point of this episode until they give us this new show. The original pilot for Star Trek obviously is not good. And it didn't succeed. So why didn't networks pick it up? Why do we think they didn't, having sat through it with our amazing fans?
Do we have
And-
time to talk about it in just one episode?
It felt so long. Oh my god! Even us explaining how long this episode felt would not do its justice. Right? We were like 15 minutes in. We're like, oh my god, this has only been going for 15 minutes.
And when we were like an hour in, we're like, there's more.
Why is this episode so long?
You know, it was
So
bad when the
much-
Discord chat got slower at the same time. Like everybody gave up at the same time,
It's true.
and then got like fire again.
We're getting close to the end, guys. We're getting close to the end. Oh,
It's so much talking in it. And Pike
Yeah, I
is
think
such a
pacing's
downer in the
bad.
beginning.
he's a
He's
downer
a-
all the way through. I don't think he's ever not a downer.
He's
I
kind of
think
got like
he finds his stride at the end of it in that, but at the beginning it's just like I don't want to do this anymore.
Well,
I wanna
Hawk,
be a cowboy.
bring up a really good point about that, right? Because they kind of talk about that a little bit in Discovery season 2, how this is that Pike. Like this is that Pike who's just not very recently, but somewhat recently been through the events of the Cage. He's kind of been rejuvenated to be back in Starfleet, but he was a mess. He was like going to go home and ride his horses, which we'll talk about too.
And his very dramatic flop up to his bed.
Yeah.
oh yeah, I was about to say there were some Kirk level acting choices
Oh,
made
it was more.
over the top,
Mopey teen.
like
Mo-
Sylvester Stallone over the top.
It's too much. Ah.
That's the one where he's the arm wrestler, right?
Yeah.
He turns his hat backwards and he's like over the top
That's it. And then once the hat
because
goes
that's how
back,
you like win. You put your thumb on. Oh god, what a fantastic film! Still, I would say that's better than The Cage.
Mhm. It was
So good.
If you want to talk about some of the things that like actually didn't, like why it didn't succeed, for one thing, I mean, it's supposed to be at the Starship Enterprise, right? Like there's really like you see it twice in the whole entire episode. And there's just like, one thing that Star Trek has always kind of been accused of a little bit is like technobabble. And like right at the beginning, you have Spock being like, check this on the computer. And it's very official, and it's not very Leonard Nimoy at that point. And they're like talking about like, well, this and this, and not the warp speed, but the time warp factor of 7. I'm just like, shut the fuck up and get to like the mission. And then I was like, at one point, I was just like, where are the drugs? Because I need them for this, like first ever warp effect they did, where the stars were overlaid like on their faces, and I was like, does anybody have a joint? Like it was just it. Yeah.
Somebody back then might have.
How about the camera angle, during like the opening credit, and that it was like basically three or four things, title cards that were on there.
Oh
The way the camera pans over onto the top of the Enterprise and that, and it's just
I didn't mind that.
The shake, really.
I thought that was fun and oldie, but like
it's fun and oldie, but it's, I don't know what they used back in like 65 for this.
Well, it was a Christmas ornament on a string. That was it.
Okay.
Just the Enterprise. They're like, and she passed. We're good. That's it for the shot until the end of the show.
Yeah, they were saying it was too cerebral, like Julian said, but yeah, like sometimes they just talk, and I'm just like, I'm losing interest already. Like I don't mind a dialogue-heavy show, but it has to grasp you.
It has to be like a Jean-Luc Picard is giving you dialogue sort of show.
Yeah. This was just they're blurting out dialogue without any real meaning behind it. Yeah,
So one of the main points of our show, obviously, we're going to focus on Strange New Worlds, and we're super excited for the characters in that. Pike is the main driving force of this episode, and I'm saying that in a very kind way.
Tell us how you really feel, Brittany.
I'm just saying, like, he didn't really drive it, but this is the version we got. Yeah. And it looks like the show was going to focus on his relationship with boys.
Yeah, like I don't mind that. I think that'll be good for like our show, but I don't know if he's mopey the whole time. I don't want to deal with that. I don't
think he will be on our show.
I know. I would. I wouldn't mind actually seeing him back in his like this type of like little bit of depressing-ish time, but not like for a whole episode. I don't mind like seeing how he's progressed. I think that's okay. I do like the idea, like seeing them talk, like him and Boyce seemed like it was a good relationship, even though their dialogue was horrible.
It was one of the only really good scenes in the episode, to be fair.
I think it's because Boyce was such a good actor, or at least he was such a good like role for that character actor.
It was more engaging at first.
Yeah, because even he got to pull some stuff out of Pike more than just, I don't like this. It's not good.
Like, why don't you like it? What happened to you? Who hurt you?
Show us on the doll.
Pull up the screen.
Yeah.
And then we had, number one and Spock, who everybody else is excited for this new show. And they're not exactly at the level we probably want to see them at, as Julian mentioned, but they did have some moments.
They did. Do you mind if I actually go back to Pike and Boyce real quick? Because
sure.
The one last thing I want to mention about them is I think it'll be really interesting to see what Eric was saying in Strange New Worlds, if Pike maybe does slip back into that depression from the cage, because Pike grabbed the time, what was it called? The time stone?
The time crystals.
Time crystals,
and knows his future. He knows how he's going to end up. And I don't care if you're Captain Kirk, Captain Pike, the strongest willed person alive, that's going to fuck your mind up, and you're going to have shit to deal with. And it'll be interesting to see if, one, if Boyce gets cast, and two, if he does, how that relationship, how he deals with knowing his fate and having a friend to kind of have his back while maybe going through that again. So I think we'll see some of the ramifications from not only the cage, but what happened on Discovery as well. So I'm really interested. I hope they cast Boyce. It would be stupid of them not to.
Yeah, it feels like the relationship that Picard had with Guinan in TNG.
Yeah,
because he helped them go through a lot of his emotional stuff, especially knowing him for such a long time and knowing like his time travel stuff before even he knew about it.
Hey, he can be the voice of reason that Pike needs.
I can't go forward from that.
Yeah.
As a woman, number one was a thing in this episode, of course.
Yep.
And she had a little more depth than Spock, I think we can all agree with, at least initially. I'm definitely more excited to see what the newer show's going to do with her, because times have changed, and it's not surprising to see a woman on your ship anymore.
Yeah.
So subtle sexism aside and
Oh my god.
boring
It wasn't that subtle, was it?
characterization.
Wasn't
No,
that?
it wasn't.
It was, but
I'm being
the
so
funny
kind
thing,
as a host.
the funny thing that came out of that little moment after he tore the head off the yeoman and that, and said, "I just can't get used to the idea of a woman on the bridge," and that, you know, and then number one gives him that look, and you realize he doesn't even see her as a woman; he just sees her as his first officer.
Yeah. It will be very interesting to see how they change that dynamic. Because listen, Rebecca Romaine is fantastic as number.
Yeah, she is.
In the little bit that we get to see her. Obviously, you can't have that 60s sexism in 2020 Star Trek, or I guess this will be 2021 Star Trek, maybe 2022. Who knows? You can't have that. So it'll be very interesting because in the cage they do hint that she has a thing for Pike, and I think that was even a little bit touched upon in Discovery. So yeah, I love her. I can't wait to see more of her. I believe, if I'm not mistaken, there won't be Pike chewing the head off the yeoman anymore, because the yeoman is now they changed her species, and there was also like some fan backlash about that as well. So
it kind of needed the change though, and
I agree.
You look at this episode and compared to the what he did after it and that, and it's like this, there was no diversity in this episode.
Oh, definitely
flat
not.
out.
It was like the Oscars. Hashtag so white.
All we got was Spock. All we got was Mr. Spock in the ears, and he didn't even get an explanation for them. So
Yeah, not yet. You're just like, whoa, what's up with his eyebrows?
Yeah.
And somebody out there watching the show in the 60s was like, finally, some decent representation, because their eyebrows are like, Yeah, I think number one is just kind of like number done with the sexism. So I can't wait. Can't wait to see it. Living for it.
Yeah, like even just that episode of her and Spock in the Short Treks episode where she's in the elevator, that was way more characterization than anyone in the cage. And to see that explored in Strange New Worlds is going to be amazing, especially now that we know that they have this relationship, Spock and number one, without anyone else really knowing that they have this sort of secret background.
Yeah. What's cool about it too is what they can do now is they obviously didn't get to explore it after the pilot because it didn't get picked up originally. But Pike, Spock, and number one were the original Kirk, Bones, and Spock. So Spock stays there and is replaced by Kirk and Bones, but Pike and number one were the originals. So it'll be cool to see how that's different from what we know from the original series.
And it's not going to be the Spock that we know, right? Even what we've seen in Discovery, he's still a pretty young, I don't want to say like a brash Spock, but he's sort of brash, right?
He's a little headstrong.
He's a little headstrong.
Especially his second season, what goes on there.
Maybe we'll see him smile like he did in the cage. Creepy smile at moving flowers.
He smiled a little bit in
Stop
Discovery.
singing when I hold them.
I said it in the chat, and I'm going to say it here. This is a fun bit of Star Trek trivia. If you're not as big of a nerd as I am, that song that the plants play will go on in the original series to be like the default sound for nearly every single alien planet that away teams land on for the rest of the series.
Could you imagine being that sound editor or that like voice actor that did the and you just hear it every episode and you're like, that's actually me.
I better get my royalties for this.
Or did they use like a theremin for that?
Probably a theremin.
They actually tried to replicate it a little bit to give it that feel when Spock ejects Kirk off the Enterprise in JJ's 09 film, and he lands on the ice planet, and they have a little bit of the sound like an Easter egg. It's pretty awesome.
And you're just like, ooh, this is an alien world.
I am a nerd.
When we rewatch the 2009 one, you're gonna have to mention that again because I'll forget.
Yep.
I'm excited for the rewatch for sure.
Yep.
I feel like it'll be better this time around as well.
So if you haven't
talk about the second film.
Yeah, if you haven't joined our Discord, definitely do it.
Our Discord is lit. People should join.
Yes.
We have so many different threads for things and discussions.
Our
It's great.
Discord is fire.
It is fire. Is that what the kids are saying?
I don't know.
Dude, Pike was on fire in this episode. I will say that was one of my favorite moments of the episode because it was just so out of nowhere. He's just suddenly burning, like, oh god, it burns.
The goggles, they do nothing.
So I just want to ask, do each of you have a favorite moment from this episode? Because we know it was long. We know the pacing was pretty much atrocious. Did anything stand out to you?
You know what? When they went through the elevator and went underground and saw the creatures for the first time, I thought that was really cool, like the cages and stuff, because that brought this whole bigger world that they hadn't really done on TV before. So it's cool that they tried to go into that without the budget, but you know, 2 different aliens is better than
Man
no
in a monkey
different
suit.
aliens. Man in a monkey suit, and then there was that creepy bird thing, which
The
Yeah,
VFX
like
budget and costume budget was on point.
yeah,
And by on point, I mean
I love the pulsing veins.
that was so cool.
remember in the-
I liked that
the-
too.
Big brain
That's still
time.
that's still my favorite thing from this episode is just the design of the Tholians and that. But the one thing that was just so funny to me is when they brought up the computer display of the Tholians, and it's just a hand-drawn portrait of them.
oh yeah, that's right.
It's,
I forgot
it
about
might-
that.
Oh yeah, were we
It
like,
might-
did Spock draw this?
Yeah, that's probably what a Spock's drawings.
Yeah.
My
I was
goodness.
wondering if it was something Roddenberry might have drawn on his own, that as
Maybe.
concept design.
Probably.
Maybe he went to give it to somebody, be like, make this look really technical, and they just didn't have the time or the budget. So he's like, this'll do. Slapped it on.
It does look technical because you made it.
So do you think, well, what sort of characters do you think we'll be able to see in Strange New Worlds? Obviously, the core trio. We've discussed the possibility of Boyce and some other characters on the side. But do you think there's going to be any themes or angles that might go back to the cage? Do we want to see the big brain time peeps again with their veiny heads?
Well, we
I'm-
already saw them back in.
Yeah, we saw them in Discovery.
to-
But
the biggest thing that I want to see carry over from the cage is I'd like to see some of the bridge crew possibly recast. We've already seen some of them in Discovery.
Mhm.
I want to see them fleshed out. I want to see Pike still struggling a little bit because it's not that far after the events of the cage. Like I still want to have him struggling, with being on a ship, having the burden of being the captain of the flagship as well. And then, also the burden of knowing his fate, as I mentioned before. I think that's going to
definitely.
have to be a heavy angle on the first season, for sure. Having said that, I want a new story. Like I want new stories, new aliens, and Laurel.
Yeah, we
Yeah,
talked
that'd be
about
awesome.
we talked about in the Voyager episode how the worst thing was there was no repercussions from that whole 2-parter, and that's all I really want. If Discovery happened and it was separate from this, I'd be really upset because there has to be something has to happen. Like Spock has to deal with his sister getting flung into the future, and the whole thing with a Pike and the time crystals. Like it all has to be part of it.
I feel like they definitely set that up to be the driving force of like where the show's going to kick off.
Mm-hmm.
Because like they might have to like show a little bit in case somebody didn't see like Discovery to like, re-explain it maybe.
Oh, for sure.
But hopefully if you're watching it, you're going to see them in Discovery anyway. Pull a me, binge it all in like a week. Thanks to Julian. But yeah, I feel like seeing your future in time crystals and knowing what's going to happen to you, like it's going to show the type of person he is also. Is he going to continue to do the things that he knows are going to happen? Because that's the way time works. You know how Star Trek always has these sort of options that you can weigh in. They're constantly traveling forward and backward in time on purpose, accidentally. So it's like, where's Pike going to go? Is this going to affect him and make him a better captain or do different things that we finally get to see before he meets that horrible fate?
Yeah.
Or maybe he doesn't this time. Who knows?
Yeah.
Yeah. He could actively try and change it. Who knows? That might be.
Or passively try and change it.
I
He might
think
just be like, oh
really
no.
off. That's me. But
What if he avoids it?
if he I mean, listen, I don't have any problem with them exploring him trying to maybe avoid it, but I think that the end result still has to have him be in that chair.
Yeah.
I'm totally fine with like, I don't accept this. I can change my fate, and he ultimately can't.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Could you
that would be
imagine
super
like the last season he's trying to fix it, and then he realizes near the end that that's all he can do.
Yeah.
He has to go that way. Oh, that would be so good.
Yeah.
I feel like that's normally what happens in Star Trek, though. Any episode I've seen with time, they've never been able to really change what's going to happen if they know what's going to happen.
Yeah.
Or it gets completely reset, like,
Voyager.
in Voyager.
Hell.
Like two options.
There was one episode of do you remember back of TNG? I think it was the first season where Picard encounters Picard in the shuttlecraft.
That is such an eerie episode, Hawk.
Yeah, right. He was faced with the same choice. It's like, do I keep making the same choices in that, or do I make a different choice? Maybe the different choice is what got me here.
I love in that episode how much that fucks with Jean-Luc too. It's like, that's not me. That's not me, and it obviously very much is him.
He meets a scared version, a version of him that wants to run from the situation, and that, and he can't stand that, and it screws with him the entire episode. Even like Riker in that way can see it.
It's a pretty hard choice to make. It's almost like he has to pick hard.
Wow.
Julian doesn't even want to. He has to pick the hard choice. Pick hard.
He's like, which one do I do?
He can't even find a thing to shame me.
Get off my bridge.
Very nice.
There it is.
You know what's never a hard pick or decision for me? Digging into our mailbox.
Hailing frequencies are open.
Okay, guys. We did the year from Hail. That was last week. Hail. Wow, you guys are tired today. That's
I don't know
okay.
what you're talking about. I'm peppered.
First up, we have our Dr. Boyce poll, aka the Boyce Choice, as I like to call it. Ironically, there are 2 men listed, so now we can also say it's boys to men.
Oh my God.
I'm not upset about that one. I like it.
So the 2 choices sent to us from Deb on Twitter, they said Clark Gregg.
Ooh.
It's a pretty good choice, I think.
That's a good choice.
Really I think Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. ended, right? Or is going to
it's ending right now.
Okay.
It's in its final season right now.
Yeah, it's a pretty solid choice, I think.
Put in that resume, Clark.
Yeah, please, Clark. And then Marianne on Twitter said Ian Glenn.
Also good.
I don't know who that is.
It's not gonna be worse than his Bruce Wayne, right?
Yeah. Ian Glenn
from Game of Thrones.
Game of Thrones.
I'd have to see a picture real quick. Or who did they play?
Sir Jorah.
Oh,
Jorah Mormont.
Yep.
Yeah.
Sir Friendzone.
Sir Friendzone.
I love him. Okay.
You're the only one.
I'll say that's a rock solid choice. And I don't know if it tips the scale. I'm sorry.
I appreciate these Game of Thrones puns.
Admiral Cornwall on Twitter nominates Ted Levine. And if for those of you out there not quite familiar with that name, think back to Silence of the Lambs and
Goodbye, horses.
It puts the lotion in the basket.
Puts the lotion on its skin, or else it gets the hose again.
It's a fucking lotion in the fucking basket.
I could see it.
I looked him up and I could see it. It's not a bad choice, actually.
No, but
he's a very good actor. I just don't say, that one.
I love Silence of the Lambs.
So do I.
Such a good film. Yeah, it's messed up, but it's incredible.
A serious creator on Twitter nominated Joe Spano.
I don't recognize this guy.
I don't either.
A name.
He's from.
Sorry.
He's in a few
Hill
things.
Street Blues.
Yeah.
And NCIS.
Yeah.
NCIS.
Okay. It's okay. There were a few other choices on there. I think we still have to go with Jeffrey Combs, right? Like it should just be Jeffrey Combs.
It would be. It would be weird hearing his voice.
To be, yeah.
I'm fine with Clark Gregg or Ian Glenn.
Clark Gregg would be. Yeah. Clark Gregg with Clark Gregg.
It's okay, Julian.
I'm just gonna call him Coulson. Coulson would be my next choice.
He would.
Dude, the cage totally scrambled his brain.
Oh my god.
I'm on fire like Captain Pike.
Yeah.
Right?
He's seeing stuff in the background. He's like, oh god.
Imagine
Where
if
am I?
Boyce died like Coulson died in the first season.
And then comes
Oh,
back.
And then comes back. He went to
Here,
Tahiti.
Tahiti's beautiful this time of year.
Time of year.
I love it.
Mm.
Okay.
So
Looks like we
just-
also have a question from Destroying Drax.
I mean, what does
Which
Drax
is-
do other than
He's
destroy?
a destroyer, right? Yeah, that's an
Obviously,
interesting
goes
name.
after Thanos for the murder of his family.
That's the whole point of why he's the destroyer.
I know.
Fun fact. So in light of recent events and in the spirit of all Trek that has come before, are there any current or past political, social, or philosophical topics you would like to see in an episode of Strange New Worlds, or see an episode of Strange New Worlds take on through the lens of science fiction?
What have they not touched upon?
That's
Yeah,
the
right.
thing,
It's Star
right?
Trek.
Yeah, tough.
Like they've talked about excessive force with policing. They've talked about
Xenophobia.
Human
xenophobia.
rights, robot rights, android rights, AI rights.
Inalienable rights from Star Trek The Undiscovered Country.
Alienable rights.
Yeah.
I just wanted to
I
say the
wonder-
opposite.
I wonder if they've ever done an episode where we've seen the repercussions of satellites in orbit. Like, you know how we have SpaceX just shooting little satellites now? I would love to see a repercussion about that, because
Like, it just messes up an engine, and they're like,
Or
what's this
something-
from? And they're like, humans back in 2002 put this satellite into space. It got dislodged, and it is now in the beta quadrant.
I guess they did Voyager, right? And
They also
Sure.
in season 7 of Voyager, they were tracking like an old lost probe as well from like, our time. That's the thing with Star Trek, right? Like, it's a great question, but they have just tackled everything. I mean, one thing that I could say that Picard I think has already done is tackled corruption within Starfleet and the Federation. Then again, I feel like you could always do that kind of arc. So something like that could, that's actually something that could theoretically be touched upon after the events of season 2 of Discovery, because the whole idea is that Discovery got wiped, right? Like, it's top secret, it's classified, no one knows that it ever existed. I'm sure there's people within the Federation and Starfleet who have an agenda and maybe want that information to come out. So you could deal with corruptions and different, not that there's, a right and a left in the 24th or 23rd century when this takes place. But that would be interesting. There's probably, people within Starfleet, as there always is, that have that kind of agenda. So
I
feel like
always,
you could-
sorry, go.
I was like, we're all
Go,
hopped
Brittany,
on it.
go.
I feel like you could do anything shadier or darker, definitely with Section 31 to begin with. Like, they're there. It's like, how long have they existed really, and how much like have they had an influence throughout pretty much any show? They could literally just throw that in anytime they want. They're like, retcon. Here you go. Here you go.
Yeah. Plus, I mean, I can remember even TNG tackling this with the episode of the Pegasus and Riker and his dark secret.
I love that episode. I love
That's fantastic,
man.
TNG is such a good show.
Well, Pegasus is great. Go ahead, Hawk.
No.
Sorry.
No, finish your thought. I'll go after.
Oh, I just thought that I thought that episode had these really great character moments between Riker and Picard, because it's the first time that Picard really has his faith in Riker tested, because Riker's standing by his ex-captain for most of the episode, and then of course Riker comes around. But I thought that those scenes, anytime that Riker is being awkward with Picard, were always really well done. And again, like that's like this section of Starfleet wants our ships to have cloaking technology. This section of Starfleet doesn't want our ships to have cloaking technology. So yeah.
It was it was a violation of the treaty with the neutral zone, and that
Correct.
they couldn't even work. They couldn't even work on the technology, but they did anyways in secret. And as a
look
result,
what
there
that
was
got them.
Yep.
Right.
There was a tragedy.
I feel like what we need is like a Winter Soldier-esque plot somewhere in this show. I guess that's like kind of what Picard's doing a bit, but like espionage.
I think,
or even better, like political assassination. I don't know if they've ever
That would be
really gone
wild.
into that.
Oh,
Like-
Hawk just took Eric's. I love it.
no, it wasn't. I was saying something else. I think I said this on I think an episode before. My favorite thing about sci-fi is that it takes political stances or ideologies and flips it, so it makes you look at it from a different angle. I think BSG did this the best in the season where they were doing where they were freedom fighters, where they were doing when they were bombers themselves and they were running into the Cylon camps and blowing themselves up. And it was a really interesting take to see it from that angle. And TNG, or not TNG, Star Trek has not really flipped the script on anything like that, but I think this would be a good time to. It doesn't have to be as dark as BSG, but I think
I do wonder, Eric, if that's actually going to be what we see in Disco season 3.
Maybe.
Yeah, it's so hard. It's so open. Like, what happened to Starfleet?
We
Well,
don't know
Starfleet isn't there, but the Federation of Planets is sort of. There's so much we can unpack just from that trailer.
Yeah.
But yeah, I would love them to look at any political topic but just like flip it and
as
make
long
us
as
look
it's
at
done
it
well.
As long as it's done well.
And Jonathan Frakes is directing, apparently.
Yeah.
You know, like, as long as he directs, it's a good episode, really.
Him and doesn't Paris also direct Star Trek
Robert
occasionally?
Tucker McNeil.
Yeah.
I don't think he's done any Disco yet.
Oh.
So, but I mean, he does
3 shows now. So,
so get him.
Don't need people.
They're good. Once the actors retire, you know, they just go to directing the show and it stays good. That's all you can ask for.
LeVar directs.
Yep,
I love LeVar.
Everyone, I want him to show up in Picard season 2. Just do it.
Yep.
Ooh, maybe since Tarantino isn't getting his Star Trek movie, maybe he'll come in and direct.
He's not going to do it. No, he's not going to do it.
Oh,
You know it's not going to happen.
He has directed television before in that. He directed 2 episodes of it what
were you about to say Sequest?
CSI.
Oh, CSI.
Dude.
Yeah, but that was a big marketing thing. Like, they pumped that up, and it was a garbage episode anyway.
It was.
Hey, Brittany, I'm going to take over the mailbag for a second because
that's fun.
we have someone from Instagram. Her name is Cassie, and she actually has a few questions, and one of them is directed towards you.
Yay. So I don't read about myself in the third person.
I mean, you do anyway. Brittany, have you finished season 2 of Discovery yet? If so, what do you think of the ending, and have any of your views changed from the previous episode about crossover episodes, our Klingon mom, Laurel, etc., etc.?
I'm glad you asked, Cassie, because number 1, hell yes, I finished Discovery season 2. Ooh. Finished that stuff so fast. So thankful to Julian for letting me borrow his Blu-rays.
Physical media.
Yep, physical media. Woo. I absolutely loved the ending. I thought season 2 was awesome, and I love how they ended it and left it on such a big cliffhanger, and also set up this new show that's going to happen. I think I cried every single episode of season 2 because I feel like Sonequa Martin Green, like, her acting is just so good, and I cry every episode because of how much I love Michael Burnham.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, I liked the idea of crossover episodes occasionally happening, maybe of the new show, if they can make it work in a good way. Not sure how they will right now. And Klingon Mom. My view on her changed. I mean, it has to, because at first, like, you only see things from a certain perspective, and you think something's happening, and you're like, ooh, I'm not okay with this. But then, you know, the character, you're able to see more of her character and understand what's going on, and her aspect of, like, where she's rising to power in Klingon society. And she's just awesome. By the end of it, I was just like, hell yeah, Klingon Mom. I want to see Laurel every day.
Yeah.
Laurel is my favorite, besides Tilly, is my favorite thing about Star Trek Discovery.
Tilly's my
I'd go
favorite
to Laurel and back for her.
Yeah. Oh.
Also, Tilly's great. I love Tilly.
One thought on the crossover episodes. Wouldn't it be awesome if Spock, like, left a message for Burnham, like, way in the future? Like,
just got goosebumps.
Oh, right? Just like over the course of, you can see him getting older too. Oh, that would be
great. I love that their, like, siblingship and their bond. I just love how that all happened in season 2, and I was just like, oh, this is beautiful, this is amazing, but also realistic.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
because of what happened. So yeah, I loved it. Thanks for asking me. I'm so happy.
I'm going to ask the second question. Since y'all are discussing the cage this episode, what does everyone think about the casting of number 1, Pike and Spock in Strange New Worlds compared to their original counterparts and the 2009 films?
Ooh.
We sort of touched upon this during the Discord too, right?
We did a little bit, yeah. I'll go first. I really love, I hope I get his name right. It's Ethan Peck, right? Playing Spock.
Yep. Yeah.
I think he's fantastic. Does he look exactly like Leonard Nimoy? No, he doesn't need to, though. He embodies Spock, and I loved everything about him in Disco Season 2. Having said that, I also really dug Zachary Quinto's take in the JJ verse as well. I've said this on the show. I would go gay for Anson Mount, so you know my answer there. I love Anson Mount. If you haven't seen the show Hell on Wheels, you absolutely should. Again, Bruce Greenwood was also an awesome,
good.
Pike. But I do think that Anson Mount brings the character more back to what we saw in the cage than Greenwood did. Then again, Greenwood's version is completely different. And then as far as number 1, I love Rebecca Romaine. I think she's fantastic in the role. I think that she does a really good job making it her own while also paying tribute to Majel Roddenberry. Or Majel Barrett Roddenberry, I should say. I think all of the casting is as good as it possibly could have gotten. Yeah.
I think the thing about Bruce Greenwood's Pike is that he's in a different point of his life than Anson Mount's Pike, right? Because he's already the head of, he's an admiral, so he's already ahead of the fleet and stuff. So I would love to see him move towards a more fatherly type Pike like Bruce Greenwood was, but it'd have to be later. We talked about how possibly seeing a younger Kirk near the end of this run. So if we got to that version of Pike later, I would be totally cool with that.
Zachary Quinto was a great Spock and that, but there's something about Peck I like better as him. I don't know what it is, if it's the tonality and the cadence in his voice and that, but he seems to he bears more of a vocal resemblance to Leonard Nimoy than Quinto does, and I think it brings that voice definitely brings something because Nimoy was so iconic as him. The dead face, the perfect cadence, a Shakespearean actor playing the role, and that he will always be iconic as Spock, and it's hard finding new versions of him in that, but for the new one I gotta go with Ethan Peck.
I'm gonna agree with everybody on their choices, because as much as I like the choices they made for the JJ verse films, and I think they're very solid actors and they did right by their characters, I like Ethan Peck more as Spock. I don't know if it's just the way his character was written or what sort of depth they're able to go with his character, even more so than the films. Obviously, we haven't seen him interact with Kirk and stuff. We don't know if that'll happen later. So, that could be a whole nother aspect. But there is that sense of, you feel like this is Spock. It's a different Spock than I've seen. But I could believe that he'll grow up to be the original Spock. That's how I feel about him. And Rebecca Romaine, I'm already excited for number 1. Just from even the first time you see her in, Discovery, I was just okay, I see you.
Her presence was incredible.
Yeah.
She really commands the screen as number 1. She's good in the other roles that she's been in, but there is something about her playing number 1 that is absolutely fantastic.
It's because she's number 1.
Yep.
And she lets everybody on the bridge know it, motherfucker. And who else are we mentioning? Pike. Pike, come on, man. Anson Mount.
Yeah.
He's so good. As soon as I saw him, I was like, that's freaking Pike. That's the best Pike that could ever exist, ever.
Yeah, square jaw, barrel chest.
Yeah.
That's what we need.
He's just really good, and you care.
Yeah. I feel like
I love how you guys are pointing out, his physicality, and I'm just over here but the character depth, the acting.
I think we all talked about the acting. Actors. I think Quinto's Spock was more confrontational than the Spock that we'd known.
Yeah.
He was way more, I want to say aggressive, but he was
sassy
sort of
Spock?
aggressive. No, because regular Spock was sassy, but he did it in his own way. This one was more. He felt more angry. I don't know. 2009 and Into Darkness, even more so.
It was an edgy time.
It was an edgier time. It was the
in the
it was
what
the
the
2010s.
the Kelvin timeline.
They're very differently written versions of Spock in that.
Mhm.
2009 Spock was he was like just a foundationalist. It was rules, and that's it. The one we saw in Discovery, in that he was much more of a, I'm going to say, prone to cowboy diplomacy than
Yeah.
than
He like
2009
questioned
Spock.
more, I think.
Yeah,
Because
but
you're
willing
right.
willing to go out on his own, and that, you know, he was convinced of that mission that he was on.
It's funny though, right? Because I know what you're saying about rules with Quinto's version, but at the same time, I thought that Quinto's version more embraced his human side than his Vulcan side, whereas Ethan Peck's version really just embodies what Nimoy did with the character, but we get to see that depth of him showing emotion because he's on this mission, and he's I don't know, it was just you know, even though he was having, you know, mental issues, there was something just still so Spock about him during the course of that season, and I thought that that was just incredible.
I thought it was amazing that they incorporated Spock being dyslexic. I thought that was a neat new idea for him, and it was part of how they always talked about this duality within him being half Vulcan, half human, and that was one of the reasons why he was sort of shunned by his people, was because he was dyslexic, and that was more of a human trait, I guess.
Yeah, it also makes sense because like throwing an aspect of like neurodivergency into a character that's, you know, so intellectually measured, it does reflect a lot of real life. You'll have people that, you know, are very acute in IQ or whatever, and then they have this, you know, learning difference. So like,
and how amazing is that
cool
for like young fans, right? To realize that this person who's a hero can have this dyslexia and still do his job to such a important degree and be that hero that everyone needs. That's what I loved about the Percy Jackson books, is that the hero was dyslexic, and the reason why he was dyslexic was because of his, you know, his bloodline. And
he's like, I'm a demigod.
Exactly.
The D stands for dyslexia. But those books do have amazing representation, and people sadly, a lot of people are only just realizing this now that it's going to be made into another movie or show.
I think it's a TV show for Disney Plus. Yeah,
we shall see.
We shall see. Hopefully it's good.
What common Trek tropes do each of you hope to avoid in this series? For example, we can't seem to get a transporter lock.
I like how it's written in SpongeBob meme font. So it's like the one where he's making fun of me, like, we can't seem to get a transporter lock. Because that's how it feels sometimes when it gets, you know, real tropey in Star Trek. You're like, oh God, here they go. There's a disruption. They're not going to get a lock on their signal.
Yeah. I'm trying to think of all of the tropes that they made fun of in Galaxy Quest, because those are all the ones that shouldn't be in the show. So transporter lock, definitely one of them.
Transporter lock.
Time dilation.
I don't. Yeah. Do we want to see Nazi Planet again?
No.
Not really, right?
That's already happened in real life.
That 2020. Like shields, okay? Like, make shields make sense. Like, shields at her 30%, yet like there's bulkheads falling down on the bridge and shit, but you're still supposed to have a certain percentage of shields, right? Like,
yeah,
why is shit sparking, and why are there bulkheads flying open, and like, why is half the ship getting destroyed if you still have shields? And like, you know, divert
power from this,
and yet the aft is, you know, still shielded. Like, do something right with shields.
Maybe by 30%, they mean like the shields just decreased to 30% like power around the entire ship versus like, oh, now only 30% of our ship is blocking anything.
That is what it means, but still,
I know.
It's just make it make sense, because it doesn't ever.
It'll never change.
No, it won't.
If they had to change it, the entire show would change.
Oh, okay, but to go along with that too, right? Captain, shields are at 7%. One more shot and we're toast. And you get one more shot and the ship isn't toast. And it's like 3 more and 4 more and 5 more.
Yeah.
If you're going to say the ship is toast after one more shot, blow that shit up. Sorry.
Oh.
Not that
I just got to think of what other
blown up, but
trying to think. I'm wondering if
Oh.
they should do more tropes in this series than they did.
Yeah, right.
Because
Because
it's Discovery and Picard.
Because we haven't seen them.
Pike goes to a new planet. Oh, time to develop a new trope. I feel like I get why the Prime Directive exists.
Mm-hmm.
But like there's so much in shows where like you're like, can you just do the right thing and help these people out, like regardless of the Prime Directive? And they usually end up doing that. But it's just like, what? Don't even say it when you land. Like, if you see people really struggling in the galaxy, don't be like, but the Prime Directive states, and we're like,
Don't
bitch,
be
we know.
Jonathan Archer.
Yeah. I don't want to be that. I don't want to see the episode dealing with the Prime Directive where there's a researcher on a planet and then they're discovered by the locals,
Yeah.
and then they have to come in and and then they have to
Ugh.
come in and deal with it with their Prime Directive stuff, and they have
Like,
to dress like the
diplomacy.
locals and be like, you know what? They're actually not spacemen.
I'm one of you.
Or at least not deal with something like that in some of the usual episodes, where they basically kidnap people and erase their memories.
Well, yeah,
which is what every race, every other species fears from an alien race. It's what we feared for years, that aliens were abducting us and erasing our memories. So don't do that.
After the probing.
So it's a Star Trek are there where they like go disguised as the natives, and the natives every single time discover their identity, and they're like, oh shit, the Prime Directive. Let's not just dress up as the locals anymore. Maybe let's not just like leave the locals alone.
Why don't they just always dress up as the singing plants and just go planet to planet hopping, just like in like a freaking like vase, and just walk around like, I'm a potted plant.
Can I say
and they keep on getting touched?
A trope that I want to see, because it's not really a trope, but it's something that I want a captain's log every single episode, so I can hear Anson Mount's voice more and more.
Yeah, they haven't done that in ages. Yeah,
we need that.
That's a good trope. I want to know exactly what day it is. What star date is it? Tell me.
Oh, our new partner Matt from Logical Coffee actually found, he put it in the Discord chat or in our conversation that we were having, a Stardate simulator, so you could find out today's day in Stardate. Erickson.
What if we start numbering our episode dates?
I don't know
way?
what you're talking about. I'm not looking that up right now.
I'm so excited.
I don't want to step on Star Trek Discovery Pod's toes, because they do that in the beginning of every one of their episodes.
Oh, never mind.
I didn't notice that.
But we can say it for this episode if we want, because we're talking about it.
I'm trying to think of what other tropes do I want to see anything? You know what? I don't want to see. I don't want to see like Q. I love Q, but I don't want to see him in Strange New Worlds. I know there's been a lot of fan things on the internet being like, let's bring back Q and let's bring the Ferengi, but those are like TNG aliens. They don't know them yet. I don't want to see them.
I feel
love
like the
them, but I don't
Ferengi
want to
should
see them.
stay. Ferengi should stay in the 90s shows. Like they should not, or I guess 80s and 90s shows, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
80s and
Yeah,
90s.
they shouldn't escape that sphere.
I want to see them in Disco season 3. Yeah.
I
Frankie's
would
are
love
just
to
there
see
in the
Ferengis
background.
Return.
Sir, look at this. Are those lobes?
You give really good umas.
Umak.
Oh my god.
Oh man.
Yeah. I don't know. I sort of want to see more building of the Federation, like in a good way, like sort of how, what was it? Enterprise did, right? More bringing planets into the Federation and stuff like that.
And
Yeah, like welcome to the club.
Yeah.
Rebuilding after the war.
Yeah, exactly.
And you get a comm badge, and you get a comm badge. That's not how it works, guys. But
No, it's not. Did they? They didn't have comm badges. They had
who wants to join Starfleet?
They have, they got the
The communication.
the communicator. I can't believe I can't remember that. I just have to do that.
You're right.
And, God.
I just meant it like more like, and you get a pin, and you get a pin. Like you join Starfleet. So if that's everything we have in the mailbag,
It is.
I guess
It is.
before I say so long, farewell, auf Wiedersehen, goodbye, all that, I want to remind you guys that our new partnership with Logical Coffee has some perks. So if you head to logicalcoffee.com, the official website, and you put in the code A Strange New Pod, which is our name, you'll be able to get 20% off your first bag of Star Trek themed coffee.
Boom.
Yeah. Fresh.
I'm your hostess with the mostest, roasting the coffee.
Sorry, had to.
I love her. So yeah.
Hostess with the roastess?
Yeah, hostess with the roastess. Do you guys have anything else you want to discuss before we head out?
I can't wait to get some Nebula coffee.
I can't wait till we do more watch-alongs with coffee because I need them at this time of night.
It's going to be great. So our next watch-along, if you're interested in joining our Discord and you enjoyed The Cage so much, we'll be looking at The Menagerie.
Ooh.
Which is probably better. Maybe.
It
I
is
won't make
better.
any promises.
There's a lot more beeping.
There's a lot more beeping. A really good episode, and it deals with Spock going against Kirk to do one last favor for Captain Pike. It's a great episode.
Yeah.
It's going to be great.
Going against the Federation and that, and we get a
Yeah.
court trial.
Yep. There's a court martial and everything.
So order some awesome Star Trek coffee, sit down with your mug, and join us for the next watch-along.
And episode.
Until then,
that episode as well.
Oh yeah, the next episode too. We're going to keep doing episodes, so don't you worry.
Yeah, we are.
So I've been your host, Brittany, and for my co-hosts, Julian, Eric, and Hawk, we're going to say live long and prosper, a new listener.